Hello, good friend, and welcome to Inside the Autism, where we delve into autism content on the lovely platform of YouTube. Takes a lot of different varieties. Sometimes we've got some cringe stuff, sometimes we've got some informative stuff, sometimes creators from other parts of YouTube start talking about autism. Well, today we have a video from Colco Cat titled How to Write an Autistic Character, brackets, without sounding cringe. Link down in the description to the original video, as always.
Hello, my fellow nerds. I've seen a lot of people in the autistic community complain about autistic representation in media, and understandably so. Yet, I haven't seen much advice for people on how to do it well other than just hire autistic people. Well, just as you don't have to be gay to write a gay character or a woman to write a female character, you don't have to be autistic to write an autistic character. It helps, of course, but it's not forbidden to write one. So, as someone who...
Well, I mean, the whole recent thing about the Sia controversial stuff, you know, it turns out that Sia is actually autistic. Doesn't always mean that representation of autism is going to be accurate if it comes from an autistic person. I think one of the problems when it comes to accurate autistic representation is that if you have one person in that who's autistic, you're not going to represent the entirety of autistic people because we're so different. And, you know, the importance of autism that people like to communicate is the variety of people on the autism spectrum. Very interesting. I'd say that a good hallmark for someone who is creating an autistic character both understands the medical, psychological side of it, but also the lived experience of autistic people. The kind of the socio-political realm, especially if it's going to be a movie or a TV show.
Who is on the spectrum, I am here to help you if you are a not autistic person who wants to write one of us. I'm going to put up a big disclaimer for this video. I am on the autism spectrum, but I do not speak for everyone. All of us are different and have very different experiences, which is what makes writing an autistic character so hard. I have what people used to call Asperger's, but I guess now it's merged with ASD, so I guess I'm officially autistic now, even though I still feel like it should be separate because I don't go through the same struggles most of my traditionally autistic peers go through. I mean, I can mask better, I face less backlash in society, I get called the R word a lot less, so I'm going to keep calling it Asperger's until it gets a new title. On that note, I apologize in advance for any language that you may not agree with. I don't really interact much with the part of the community that tells me what language is in and what language is out. I'm not here to tell you how you should refer to us or whatever because I don't know that stuff. And
I think that's fair enough, to be honest. I'm glad that they've made that disclaimer because I think, to be honest, the autistic community can be somewhat harsh when it comes to making, you know, decisions about people's intentions based on the language that they use. I think giving the context that this person's not part of the autistic community says a lot. I appreciate that they've made that clear. They're definitely going to be ignorant on stuff related to language and the socio-political stuff, I imagine, though.
Personally, I don't care. Another thing, I'm going to be talking about the less severe end of the spectrum. I don't know what it's like to have CDD or Reds. I only know my experience. Also, please don't use this video to diagnose yourself. Alright, with that out of the way, let's write some autistic people. When it comes to autistic
There's
people,
definitely
what you
without that disclaimer, I think those comments would be like, ooh, red flags going off, you know. I don't have Rets. What? Okay, come on.
you need to know is that we're just like everyone else. But
No, we're not.
we are all very different from each other and exhibit vastly different traits. That is why they call it a spectrum.
It is.
These traits are best exemplified on Matt-Lowry spectrum. This is a chart that I actually really like. We can have some, a lot, or only a few of these, and experience them at very different intensities. So
This is quite encapsulating of a lot of different autism things. I think when I tried to explain what the autism spectrum was like, I had so many comments of people saying that it's like this 8D, 10D dimensional model of how I should refer to what the autism spectrum is. I'm like, my God, I don't even know how to explain something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that's quite useful terminology, actually. Situational mutism, demand avoidance, inertia, expectation sensitivity, special interest, stimming. Yep.
Some neurotypical people may even have one or two of these. And this wheel, my friends, is what you are going to use to write your autistic character. But before you go nuts into going into every little part of this chart, let me go over some don'ts when it comes to writing autistic people. It is always a good idea to learn from what not to do, especially when it comes to writing autism. Don't over-exaggerate symptoms. When writing autism, do it subtly. Less is more. The bad representation is often criticized because it is over-exaggerated.
Yeah.
You will never hear anyone complain about someone pulling a J.K. Rowling and going, "Psst, hey, this character's been autistic all along." Because some of the best autistic characters were often never planned to be autistic in the first place.
I mean, I feel like, you know, when I've watched movies, they tend to highlight people who are typically very different to like other characters in the series, you know, the quirky ones, the odd ones, you know. And so I find myself relating to a lot of characters, particularly within like the whole fantasy kind of mystical stuff, you know. Makes sense.
Marcy Wu from Amphibia shows that many of the best autistic characters are normally not written with autism in mind. Yeah. Basically, many people in the fandom just made the autism connection and the author just said, sure. It's subtle, but you can definitely tell it's there.
That's like the whole thing with SpongeBob, isn't it? I don't know if it's typical, but I have an autism radar. Takes seconds. Mine is pretty good, you know. I've yet to be wrong.
It's a part of her, but it isn't the entire focus of every single scene she's in. If you exaggerate something and it's not a parody, people may think you're mocking them. Yeah. Unless you're talking about someone who's really far on the other end of the spectrum, the majority of us either mostly act neurotypical or get really good at masking. Now, a lot of you guys have probably heard the word masking a lot, so I'm going to get into it. It is one of the most important traits that I need to talk about today, and the reason why you may never know that someone is autistic unless they tell you.
Interesting.
Masking is a mechanism that some autistic people use to appear more neurotypical and be accepted in society. I got good at it through experience. You don't just wake up one day and suddenly become a master at hiding your autism. You build it up over time.
It's a university
I built it
degree.
through the following: mimicking how other people behave, which is how most people do it, and can also be to your detriment if you mimic the wrong people, which is what happened to me.
Yeah, same.
Going to anime conventions and then copying the fragments of my confident and leaderly behavior that I developed into other situations. Due to the origins of this channel, I was kind of put into like a leadership position within the fandom. And so when I would go to conventions, sometimes I would get recognized, and a lot of the times I ended up having to lead a lot of the photo shoots. And then suddenly I got shoved into this leaderly position, and I had never had that before. So I took the confidence of whenever I talked about my special interests.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that most people's ideas of autistic masking aren't like, it's not painted as like a good thing. Like, you know, I think it can be, I guess, in certain respects, but it's like the reason for it is usually not good, and also the effects on the person is not good. A lot of autistic women, especially those with relatively lower support needs, do tend to mask very, very well. It's not necessarily a good thing, though, for sure. What do you mean by far end of the spectrum? They mean someone who is relatively high support needs, like ASD-free, I imagine. I think in general, like if I could think of good ways of writing autistic characters, it would be individuals who perhaps are a little bit quieter, who have a varied amount of interests, who struggle with the sensory stuff. I think that's generally what I would say. Like, other stuff, I don't know. I would try and stay away from meltdown related things. Maybe include stuff about shutting down. That might be quite a safe thing to do. Yeah, I think those ones, you know, perhaps they have some particular interests that they really like to talk about quite a bit, or relate to. Perhaps they have some interesting, unique points that they talk about, which is different. They're very direct in their communication style. You know, perhaps don't always know how they're feeling. I'd say some good ones. Can you guys think of some other good ones? Masking is exhausting, 100%. I thought I masked my autism well, suppressed my Tourette's well. Apparently I was wrong and everyone knew it but me. Interesting. I also thought I was good at masking. Turns out I was doing a lot that people considered weird. Yeah, it's not a flawless thing. Like, even people who I know who are you can consider very high masking, very, very good social skills. There are still differences that I can see very, very clearly. But that's because I understand a lot about it, and, you know, it takes up a lot of my thinking space, you know, my own experiences as well, for sure. I like the word spectrum. It's a good word, yeah.
And applied it to situations where normally I'm not as confident. And then there was being dragged into neurotypical interactions by my parents and using a combination of copying that confidence and mimicking those around me. Masking can make you an autism ninja, but at the end of the day, it can be emotionally draining and exhausting.
Yep.
It takes me 30 minutes to an hour of just sitting there and resting when I get home from work just because I'm mentally drained. Therefore, if someone doesn't look or act autistic, there's a chance that they're just really good at hiding it. If you're not autistic and you've never written an autistic character before, I suggest you start on this side of the spectrum before going down any further. I
think that if you were wanting to create an autistic character that was quite extroverted, it would require a lot of knowledge about autism. I think generally, like, look at someone who is a bit more introverted. I think like that would be easier to write about. Yeah, same. My mask is still autistic. I thought I was masking. People already knew based on my mask, so I guess some people just never can mask. At least in my case. I definitely can. I think most of what would convince people that I'm not autistic is my social skills. It doesn't really matter, like, if I'm talking about my interests, or, you know, I'm alexithymic, or, you know, sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed. As long as I hide feeling overwhelmed, and communicate with people in a way that makes them think that I'm good at communicating or socializing, people just don't bat an eye. You know, I think a lot of the stuff that we think that people can pick up on and see, perhaps they pick up on it subconsciously, but not consciously. You know, stuff related to indirect communication and such.
Start with writing an ask.
Oh yeah, another good one. Yeah, having specific snacks that they eat, like, all the time. That would be another good trait for a character.
And then you can get to the nonverbals, lest you be accused of mocking the community. Music, come on, get out here. Now, before I get into this, music is really hard to talk about because, well, it's about a level 3.
I really want to, I know I keep pausing it, but I really want to highlight, like, when I talk about, you know, people who are autistic who aren't necessarily within the autistic community, being sort of bashed and told off and, like, sort of alienated from the community, this is the type of person that I'm talking about. They obviously don't have any negative intentions with what they're doing. They are using language that is quite inflammatory to a lot of people. And perhaps ideas and conceptualizations of autism that aren't ideal for a lot of people within the autistic community. But I have a lot of friends, like, most of my friends who are autistic are like this. Like, this is, like, the level of understanding that they have around the socio-political stuff around autism. But these are the type of people that I'm talking about when it's probably a good example of, you know, the people I'm talking about who, you know, just tend to get alienated even though they are autistic and even though they don't have the bad intentions. You know, I think that's 100%. Definitely subconscious. Hello, Aptem. Good to see you.
Autistic character rather than a level 1. Do people still use levels?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just going to use it anyways.
Not in
I'm
social
not
context,
nonverbal,
usually.
and it's hard to compare music to other media because very rarely do we see autism representation beyond level 1. And when it does exist, it's rarely ever good. Like this movie. Autism is a spectrum. On the same spectrum as Asperger's, you have CDD, which is something that is very, very different. And I'm not saying, oh, it tried, so I guess it gets a pass. No. There is...
The spectrum is different to the ASD. What is it? Someone mentioned the term continuum, the ASD continuum. The spectrum is used to refer to the combination of different traits. The ASD continuum is a medical thing that people use to categorize people's potential levels of support needs, usually based on how much support they need, the strength of their autistic traits that usually have some impact on their ability to function independently.
So much wrong with this movie, from the bright lights and sounds, to the restraints, to the casting, and there are plenty of non-autism things wrong with this film too. My point is, I'm not going to talk about
the main issue that people have with this is I mean, people do make those negative judgments about this film, but also the main point of the film was the issue with it was the restraint. That was the biggest thing that made this film a flop and a hated film.
Personal feelings about it, because I don't think I have the right to be offended by this, because this clearly is not supposed to represent me. And it never was. That being said, one of the reasons why many people cringed and felt that this was so offensive is that music's symptoms are way over-exaggerated here. I think the movie would have been a lot more bearable if she cut out the exaggerated facial expressions. Instantly would have made it better, and the backlash would not nearly have been as severe. Also, we're not like superheroes that we could hear things from a couple doors away. It's more like we don't have a filter for smaller stimuli. If we were to point out that person chewing loudly, you'd probably hear it too. But
yeah, the whole misophonia stuff, isn't it? Yeah, someone said something. Parrot says people are not immune to biases and prejudice against their own community. No, for sure. But I think what I tried to point out with individuals like this is their intention is not to be offensive or anything. It's more of a lack of understanding or awareness about stuff like that. You know, they don't have the desire or the ignition to be a part of the socio-political stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're inherently a bad person or they're doing it purposefully. Tia said she would take the restraint scenes out, then she never did. Well, the problem with taking the restraint aspect of that film out is that that's kind of one of the central points of the film. I have no clue what that is. We're watching a video called How to Write an Autistic Character Without Sounding Cringe.
Your brain can filter out that person's chewing automatically, or the uncomfortable hem in your clothes.
Habituation.
Ours, less so. It's less of a super hearing thing and more that we can't turn off the background noise and the insignificant sound, so it's everything all at once. We are perceiving the same thing, but my brain can't handle the stimulus that it is given. Don't read from a textbook. Remember that chart I showed you? Well, whatever you do, do not use all of it. Do not go down a checklist of autism symptoms trying to collect them like Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
Just sprinkle in a few of these traits and that will be enough.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to do that, you need to understand what it actually looks like in people, you know? Because people can derive different things from looking at a checklist of symptoms and signs like that.
If there's anything you take away from this video, less is more. As I said before, the best autistic characters were not even originally written with autism in mind. And this is what we want to see. As another autistic friend of mine put it, a lot of autistic representation tries to be too accurate. And they end up making a character whose personality traits are just copy-pasted DSM symptoms. Basically, their view of autism comes entirely from reading psychology textbooks and not from actually interacting with people on the spectrum. This is one of the most common and most damning mistakes.
Because most people don't fit with all of the autism traits. The majority of people don't have all of them. You know, it varies from person to person, for sure. The Pokemon gotta tick them all approach. Yeah.
Mistakes I see when it comes to bad autistic representation. Autistic people are very different from one another. Different symptoms, views, opinions, ways of communication. We can't even agree on what to call each other. You cannot categorize us all. Instead, talk to one of your autistic friends or go on Reddit forums if you don't have any autistic friends. Reddit is your best friend when it comes to writing.
I mean, it can, maybe. Oh, I don't know. Get a variety. Watch some autism YouTubers. I'd say YouTube is the safest out of them all, to be honest. Instagram can be quite good as well for the socio-political aspects. Reddit can be good if you just want to get a range of different opinions from different autistic people. You might get some trolls though.
Writing. Remember, always write from experience, even if it's someone else's. A good example would be June Chen from The Ghost and Molly McGee. One of you guys actually recommended this to me. She's very clearly and explicitly autistic, but there's only a couple things there. She isn't riddled with every autism trait in the book. Meanwhile, music, get back here. We're not done talking about you. This movie was a prime example of Googling all of your research and not using anecdotes like a writer should. I could see that they were checking off a list of every single autistic symptom as I trudged through this movie. It's just all too much in one autistic body. I have some of the same stims that music does, but they don't just all come at me at once like it's some kind of stim salad. My body isn't in autism mode 24/7. It's like...
Yeah.
writing someone who's on her period and putting in every single symptoms of periods that you could possibly think of. That poor character is going to die. It's all so much and so unnecessary. Don't write autistic traits from a neurotypical point of view.
Yes.
Another key to writing autistic people is to not write it from how an outsider views it. Write what's happening from how the autistic person is experiencing things first, and then translate it over to whoever's point of view that you need. It's the same as writing any other character. You know what's coming. You need motivation. Don't just have us do things for no reason. Give the character's actions motivations. We are not stupid. We have motivation behind everything that we do, just like any other person. That motivation, though, may not be our intent or what we want to do, but it's still a cause. It's still a motivation, but it's just not ours. If we make an involuntary motion, that's still caused by something in the brain and should be treated as such. If I just start rolling my eyes out of nowhere, it's not going to have the same impact as me feeling the stim coming on, trying my best not to look rude, and then doing it and then feeling guilty and paranoid afterwards. You see how...
I think it's important to point out that stimming is different to tics, like Tourette's related verbalizations and physical movements. Stimming is different.
Adding motivation can instantly make things feel less fake or forced. Also, you have reactions from that character, feelings. You make that person a person instead of a walking, talking stimbot. A great example is Quinny from Heartbreak High. This is probably the best autistic representation I've ever seen. Likely because she was played by an actual autistic girl. We can see the things that lead up to her putting her headphones on or her meltdowns. As a result, they feel very real, and we can see her anguish. We can see her struggle. The Good Doctor has been...
Yeah. Chloe Hayden, for anyone who wants to check out their Insta. They're pretty prolific on Insta. They also have a YouTube channel, to point out.
Recommended to me several times as what not to do. Most people are tired of the savant role, and the I am a surgeon clip has been memed all to hell at this point. Also, why does he look like a robot here? Like, the shoulder bunching I get, but bro looks like he's trying way too hard here. Let's also look at music's meltdown scene. It feels like it just comes out of nowhere.
Trigger warning.
What is causing the meltdown in this scene? Translating it to another point of view, instead we'd see first maybe annoyance or discomfort by whatever...
The restraint. God damn it.
...is going on. Maybe a look of panic on her face, music trying to hold back tears, and then maybe the scene. It can all be very fast, but the small details like that can make a big difference in your writing. Again, it all comes down to motivation. Also, the scene with the gum made me cringe so hard. Like, I think even low-functioning autistic people know not to eat gum off the street. You don't see the motivation behind what she does, she just does it. That's why it comes off as off-putting.
I knew an autistic guy who had a habit of going around and picking up like cigarette butts and having those because his care providers wouldn't supply him with cigarettes. Love Chloe. Really, really, really good example of well done autism representation. I think it's important to like not include them because of the autism, but sort of make sure that you're portraying the complexity of human experience within that too, you know. Adson says, wait, I have a question. How can one look into the world from the exact point of view of another person if the initiator is not capable of putting on the exact pair of shoes? That's a difficult one. I think you'd have to have a lot of experience and conversations with people who have lived experience in order to write in that way. You know, perhaps if you're writing a character of that nature, making sure that you have someone who can read it over, try and understand what they're trying to get at and stuff. So perhaps you could have a sort of review writer, sort of just to review your work, I guess. I wouldn't say that people who aren't autistic should not have the ability to do that, because I think, you know, having some good autism representation out there is always like, you know, a good thing if it's good and if it's accurate. I understand what you mean though, for sure. Sarah says, I'm currently watching Bargain Hunt with my mum, Thomas. They're filming the episode from your hometown. No way. That's pretty cool. me and my late grandma loved to watch that together. I enjoyed it. We went bargain hunting at the local what they called car boot sales. You know, people would go with their cars to sell stuff that they have in the house. Fun times. Scooby Kitty Doo says, YouTubers like Chloe and Thomas, Autistic AF, Dana have been so helpful. Thank you for all you do. Oh, thank you, Scooby. I appreciate that a lot.
Rather than realistic. That was a moment where I really took a step back and I was like, yeah, this is bad. This is also how I know that most people who criticized music never actually watched it. Because if they did, they would have definitely said something about this scene.
Again, I feel like this is something that some perhaps high support needs autistic people might do, to be honest. But the thing is, it's not the central part of the issues that people have about it. It's the general representation and also the restraint being the biggest one, for sure.
And the bee scene. Like, if music was allergic to bees, she would remember that and not try to hold a bee? Music here is written like she's just stupid. Even though non-verbal people can write things like this. Which brings me to my next point. Don't infantilize us. This is a huge complaint in the community. The majority of us tend to function well on our own. If you're going to write someone further down on the spectrum, go look up other people's experiences. And again, do not pull everything out of a textbook. Even the people that need help with daily tasks and can't speak are just like us. We're just people. People who are nonverbal just cannot physically produce speech. It is either an issue with your motor skills that keeps you from producing sounds, or it is a language impairment where your brain doesn't understand language overall. That being said, we still think like everyday people. Even when we do see Quinny getting overwhelmed, Darren doesn't treat her.
I think we can think differently, but there is no denying that we are human beings. My son wouldn't hold a bee. No, I'd be running for the hills. Not gonna lie. I don't want to be stung by one of those. Ugh. There was one time where my grandma was absolutely terrified of any harm coming to me at all, and insects and cats particularly. And there was one time where there was a bee circling me, and she told me to stand still, and it landed directly on my eyeball. For about 15 seconds, it was just crawling on my eyeball. It was terrifying. Since then, I've been petrified by any flying insects. I mean, it's the sensory aspect of it as well is also very off-putting.
Like a child. He treats her like a friend. Her problems are framed like any other characters.
Yeah.
She doesn't at all appear childish in any kind of way. She appears like an everyday person. The objectification and the infantilization of music is very heavily prevalent within the film.
Not the restraint
She's
scene.
treated more like an object or a pet rather than a person.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels so off and so wrong. You can tell Maddie is trying her best to portray her emotion and her humanity to the best that she can in some of these scenes. That's one thing I actually will give her credit for. In a couple of scenes, I can actually see like some emotion, some spark of personality in her eyes. But in most scenes, she's just an object or an animal. The focus is never on her as a person unless it is an overstimulating music video that completely detracts from the plot. Don't make the entire focus of the character their autism.
Yes, 100%.
Avoid making jokes where the butt of it is autism. I don't mind, but I am not everyone. This is kind of a common critique that I hear. It's fine every now and then, but if this character exists just to be autism jokes, people may not think it's the best autistic representation.
No.
Look at Kyle Broflovsky. He's Jewish, and some Jewish jokes are made at his expense.
I think if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that the reaction of the audience isn't also laughing at them. Like, because, I mean, it is somewhat accurate that people make fun of autistic people for that stuff, but you don't want it to be reinforced by, like, the narrative of the actual scene or story or, you know, something of that nature.
But he has a character outside of that. He doesn't exist just to be a Jew. I know it's stated that he's not, but you can't deny what they originally had in mind. Honestly, I like Sheldon. Seeing him on screen was the first time I actually felt cool for being who I was. For once, my special interests were cool and not weird. And my parents stopped calling my special interests weird, and they actually started to understand me better because they loved the show. Yeah, I know they have trash taste, but it helped me in the end. The main thing that people don't like about Sheldon is that he's the butt of jokes, and he's mostly used for comedy, though I personally don't care. Sheldon was seen as cool in my high school, and he made things like special interest and nerd stuff more accepted. And that is why I have a soft spot in my heart for this character. If you want to see a real example of making a character nothing but autism, look at the new Predator movie. There is nothing to this kid except that he's autistic whenever the plot demands it. And that's all I have to say about that.
Predator movie.
A good example would be Abed from the Community.
Yeah, I forgot about the Predator movie. I mean, it's not new, but I think this video was... Oh no, it was 2 weeks ago. Okay, the newest Predator movie. Like, the central part being that this kid's autistic. Like, it's so out of pocket. It was crazy. Have you guys watched that? Let me know in the comments what you think about that Predator movie. I like Sheldon too. My favourite relationship in that show is the friendship between him and Penny. Yeah, I kind of rate that friendship as well. I'm not a Friends person, like a fanatic about Friends, but I have been exposed to it quite a lot by like one person that I dated, so I have seen it. I quite like that too.
When asked for good autistic representation,
Abed,
the most recommended example was by far Abed from the Community. He checks a lot of Aspie stereotypes, but he's portrayed as being an awesome and interesting person. He's a lot like Sheldon if they took out all the things that people have a problem with.
Yeah.
Abed works similar to Sheldon, but is seen as a positive figure because his autism is portrayed in a way where it is not 100% seen as annoying, and it's not dunking on him for being autistic. His autism is portrayed as something cool and helpful at times and a fun part of his character, but we also see some of the struggles that he goes through, showing that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Again, personally, I'm just happy that someone's making Aspies look cool, but I know a lot of people do care, and that's what matters. We just want to look cool for once. Don't make our entire character being a secret genius. Having autism does not make us secret geniuses. Yes, I know, shocker. I wish we were, but we aren't. However, I totally understand why people think that we are. The secret...
I think what the secret genius thing, I mean, it's something that I've, seen from the accounts of individuals who are very, very good at their job is that whilst they might be very, very talented in certain areas, they can sometimes struggle when it comes to the social elements of the workplace, because it's not always based on how competent you are at a job. There's a lot of different social hierarchical type dynamics that are involved in like succeeding in the workplace. And some people can be exceptionally good at something but never really receive the recognition, I guess. So the whole secret sort of talented person or genius thing, I guess, kind of works in a sense. But yeah, I mean, I think we've had enough of exceptionally intelligent autistic people in the media. It's like it's the only thing that we have. It's like no. Let's have more creative autistic people in the media. That'd be cool. Non-mathematical science people.
Behind our geniusness is actually called hyperfocusing and special interests. Special interests, or spins, oh, that's kind of cute, are interests or hobbies that tend to overly occupy an autistic person's time, thought process, and life. If you also have ADHD, these interests will change and suddenly drop, and then you end up with a closet full of things that you lost interest over time, and it just haunts you. This entire channel was once a physical manifestation of my special interest in Hitalia. Yep, this entire channel was brought to you by autism. But to describe special interests, it's like hyper-focusing, but on an entire thing, concept, or hobby.
Yeah.
I may not communicate well,
life.
but when someone is talking about my special interest, I can talk for hours. I have to know everything about it. I will spend hours or days researching it. I'm constantly hungry for more information about it and things surrounding it, which is how I wrote my first book. Yep, this was pure autism, baby. A special interest engages your mind. It's like a constant craving for a concept or a hobby. This is how we end up collecting stuff, knowing absolutely anything and everything about a certain topic, being really good at a specific hobby or thing. And then there's hyperfocusing. This is more of a thing with the people that have the ADHD autism combo. You know,
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think it's the autistic inertia aspect of it is quite compelling. I can definitely hyperfocus to the point where I spend an entire day working and then not remembering to eat and drink and go to the toilet. No ADHD traits here though. It's like the autism episode of The Girl Meets the World where the character gets tested because he scored high on an IQ test and the school wants to figure out why. I don't think I've seen that. We need some exceptionally attractive autistic people on TV, like myself. Oh, Figgy, you're so you're so humble. Oh. Amanda says, "Hey Thomas and friends, what are we ranking today?" We're not doing any ranking. We're watching a video on how to write an autistic character without sounding cringe.
Double A's. Not to be confused with the triple A's who also have anxiety. Basically, when your brain gets really hooked on a certain thing, likely a special interest, it just goes from there, blocking out everything around you. The one and only thing on your mind is this thing. Everything else gets pushed to the side, even if it's something like eating, showering, or your house being on fire. You are in the zone. And then 3 hours later, you have a 15-page script on autism. You can focus on something and you are very fast and efficient at doing that thing. And if anything tries to stop you, It's also related to this idea of monotropism, which has been making its round around the YouTube communities recently. Will not be happy. This sounds great, but often leads to us neglecting things that we actually need to do, like taking care of ourselves, our environment, work, or chores. In short, we're not secret geniuses, we're just very passionate about the things that we like and tend to remember cool but useless information. We can be geniuses in a specific field or hobby, but likely because we are hyper-fixating on it or it's one of our special interests. You can see this in Abed from the community. He's not a genius in every single thing. He just has expertise in his special interests. Bad example, again, Predator. The next level of evolution thing, You can tell that these writers have never actually talked to an
Next
autistic
level
person.
of evolution.
Definitely not the next level of evolution. I would love not to roll my eyes in public or bunch up my fingers when I'm trying to type, leaving a big mess of whatever the hell I just typed on screen.
Yeah, that's what the Predator thing was about. It was about they wanted the autistic kid because he was the next stage of human evolution. The Aspie supremacy narrative built into a Predator film. So are we cringing or we do not? Hopefully we don't cringe.
Oh, and not being able to express my tone properly or convey my emotions. Yeah,
I think
that's
you do a pretty good
definitely
job.
superhuman
Pretty good job.
prowess. Or how about the uncontrollable meltdowns that mar my childhood, or the fact that I can't go to loud concerts anymore? Or when I'm snuggling with my boyfriend and his beard slightly touches my skin, it becomes so incredibly itchy. Yippee! Thanks, autism. People sometimes say that autism is just a different way of thinking, or it's not a mental illness at all, or autism
Yeah, it's
doesn't
not a mental
need
illness.
a cure. Autism sucks, man. It's not all rainbows and sparkles and
Okay, that does took a different turn. What? What is? People say that autism doesn't need a cure and that it's just different people. Yeah, and that's a bad thing. What? No. Why are you taking this turn?
special interests. It's weird looks from people around you. Constant apologies, spitting on your screen involuntarily.
This is
People
very
thinking-
in keeping with the pathology paradigm medical model stuff. I don't really like that. No, I don't either, to be honest.
that you're angry or rude when you're really just trying to talk. Embarrassment, blowing interviews and job opportunities.
The fact is that they've been talking about a lot of positives and also a lot of negatives, but they've come to the assumption that the negatives is what autism is. I think that's what's disconcerting about this. Is that, am I getting it right? Is that what they think? Let's continue. Maybe they'll add some context.
Being able to communicate your thoughts, constantly worrying that you're going to come off as rude. But that is for another day. In conclusion, don't over-exaggerate symptoms. Write autistic traits from a neurodivergent point of view first. Put motivation behind autistic symptoms. Don't infantilize the character. Don't copy and paste the symptoms of autism from a textbook or Google. Don't put every symptom of autism inside one already overwhelmed autistic brain. Don't make the entire character's purpose or personality autism. Avoid the secret genius trope. I'm flattered, but it's getting old. The best autistic characters are often written without autism in mind.
Yes.
It's not that hard to write an autistic character. Just put the character before their autism. Their autism can be part of their character, sure.
Put the character in front of their autism. If you're writing the character in with autism in mind, I think it's important to get it right, and it is quite difficult. Unless you have a lot of knowledge on it and a lot of understandings of the lived experience aspects to it. But if you're just writing a quirky, cool character, it may just turn out that people think that they're autistic, for sure.
But it's more of a spice that you can add on top of their dialogue, movements, motivation, interests, actions. Overall, just make us entertaining and not cringe, and we won't judge you, because the autistic community latches onto autistic icons pretty quickly, even if they aren't autistic. It actually really isn't that hard to please us. If you make a character cool and interesting, we will very likely love it.
Please.
Hello, my fellow.
Maybe. I mean, have you spent time in the autistic community? There's a lot of conflicting ideas and opinions. Oh dears.
Nerds. I've seen a lot of people in the
Okay, I think I've accidentally started playing it again. The sort of the conclusion element of this video is fairly disconcerting, but I think that the intentions of it, a lot of the suggestions that they have around writing the autistic characters are pretty solid, to be honest. I don't really have much to say when it comes to that front. I'm gonna considering the disclaimer at the start of the video. I'm talking like I'm able to do anything, but I appreciate them making this video, although, you know, the last comment kind of tipped me over the edge just a little bit. You know, I can deal with the language differences and the sort of the pathology kind of termed sort of perspectives on autism, but yeah, and ending in saying that autism is kind of horrible and that people saying that autism doesn't need a cure is a bad thing is quite, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? I'd be interested to know, what other things would you include if you were to write a manifesto on how to create a good autistic character, a good representation of an autistic person? Let me know down in the comments, and whilst you're there, please make sure to like and subscribe. Go check out the original posters video in the link. Check them out if you want to. And if you want to support me further, I do have another channel where I create some pretty cool original content on. It's my main channel. And if you subscribe and you become a member on that channel, you'll be able to view all of these streams, because these are stream clips. All of these streams in their entirety, about a year's worth, lots of content for as little as £1, and it really supports me as a relatively quite small creator. They maybe could have done a bit more research to make it slightly more accurate, to eliminate some of those negative aspects. Yes. Yeah, I think so. The problem is the socio-political world of autism is incredibly complex, and they are right. People have a lot of mixed ideas and beliefs about different things about language and autism, and you know, it is a very complex sort of area to get into, for sure. So I can understand their hesitancy of sort of entering in and trying to understand it, but I think they could have done with a bit more information of that. But overall, like the topic of the video, what they were talking about, writing an autistic character, the things that they suggest, I think are pretty solid. Understood their perspective though. Yeah, and that's usually what I talk about. As I said, like, I don't think this person has any negative intention about it. Perhaps their ways of thinking about autism isn't the best, but you know, good video. Glad we watched it.